Hey everybody, it's Matt. This is a 10-minute Bible Hour podcast. I broke my teeth. I chewed on something, I broke a tooth, and I had to go to the dentist, and they injected me with things. And I hadn't recorded the podcast yet for today. And so then I just waited for it to get better, but now I'm out of time. So I guess this is just how it's going to sound. But I'm going to try to fake it to add a little bit of dignity, even though this isn't comfortable. See, that sounds a little bit better. It doesn't sound better. This is so bad. Whatever, we're going to do it. And, it's like we're talking about anything important today that I wouldn't want to sound entirely ridiculous. Oh, wait. We're in Matthew 28, and we're talking about the resurrection of Jesus, the most important event in all of history, the pinnacle of the redemptive plan, the thing that vindicates Jesus of Nazareth and makes sense and adds potency to every story we've looked at for the last 3 years. Hey, this is what we got. One time, my buddy Adam was having a birthday, and so I went to his house, and I got the door code because he and we've been friends since like fourth grade, right? So I just went into his house to surprise him for his birthday, and I realized, hey, there's an opportunity here to really surprise him for his birthday. So kind of like E.T. when he hid among the stuffed animals, I hid in this big mountain of blankets right next to his recliner, and I was in there for a long time. And eventually Adam came in, and he gets some food or whatever, watches some stuff, and I was like, this just it keeps getting funnier the longer I wait. So I got a little peephole. I'm looking at him through my blanket fort, just right next to him the whole time. And if he'd started doing something weird, I would have jumped out and interrupted him. I'm not going to let my friend embarrass himself, but I waited for a long time in there. And then finally, when the time was right and I didn't think he had anything by him that he was going to spill, I just exploded out of there in his empty house and screamed, "Happy birthday." And his physical reaction was like a fainting goat. He didn't talk. He didn't really breathe. He just straightened his arms and shook violently. He couldn't conjure anything at all for like 5 seconds. I'm picturing it. And then he came around, and then we made a pledge that we would never do anything like that to each other again. But I think I'm owed one, so if he does it to me, that's fine. That's the kind of reaction that we're getting a description of in Matthew chapter 28 for people who are seeing something that causes an instant validation of the assertion that there is something bigger than this physical world, than the natural world. There's a couple of guards who are stationed here at the tomb, right? And when they see the angels show up, when they realize that this dead man is walking out of this tomb and coming back to life, I mean, think about it. Their entire paradigm is going to get wrecked here, and the text just gives us this description about them shaking even more violently than my friend Adam, who I terrorized on his birthday. Matthew chapter 28, after the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the tomb and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. We're getting back to the dead men in just a second, but a little bit of detail housekeeping stuff here. Okay, the 3-day thing. Some people look at this and they get really hung up on that, and they're like, wait a minute. I mean, Jesus predicted 3 days. Everybody's expecting 3 days. How is Sunday 3 days after Friday? Well, I mean, counting days gets a little screwy, doesn't it? I mean, I think you could make a case for what day comes 3 days after Friday. You could really make a case for Tuesday, right? Because if you interpret that to mean full days, then you got Saturday, you got Sunday, and you got Monday. I feel like I'm recounting the lyrics from that Rebecca Black song. So yeah, I guess you could count it like that. I guess you could say, well, anytime on Monday would count as the third day because you got all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then anytime on Monday, that would work. Or you can render it the way it looks like they rendered it back then, because we don't have any record of anybody objecting to the claims of the resurrection on the grounds of, wait a dang minute, that wasn't 3 days. What it looks like is they must have counted that as whatever day you say that something's going to happen 3 days after, that counts as day one. Day two is going to be a full day, and then any time on the third day would count. And really, it's only very recently that a few people in the internet world have looked at that and been like, that just ain't right. That's not how you count days. But again, like I said a minute ago, I'm there are things in the Bible that challenge me and that I look at and I'm like, hey, you know what? I just got to be honest. That one's hard. I'm not totally sure what to do with it. There are other things that some people are very concerned with that I look at and like, maybe it's a bigger deal than I think. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but this one for me just ain't a hang up. If somebody says, I'll see you next Saturday, and it's like a Friday night, some people would read that to me and I'm going to see you tomorrow, but I think that would be the minority read, right? Wouldn't most of you say, oh, that means I'm going to see you in 8 days? So even still today, there's some ambiguity about what we mean when we use terms like this or next or how many days from now. And apparently this didn't perturb anyone back in the day. So there, I've spoken to the days of the week controversy. I think that covers the bases on that for the time being. But now we get into the juicy stuff. There's another earthquake. Well, I invite you to think back. Is it just a page on this Bible? Yeah, think back a page. What happened the last time we had an earthquake? Well, the tombs opened up and people who were dead came back to life. Remember? Okay. All right. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. Remember, Matthew likes this bookend thing. And so we have this parallelism here. Oh, we got another earthquake. What happened last time there was an earthquake? Tombs opened. People came back to life. Is that what's about to happen here? But instead, we get another visual callback, and that is the display of heavenly glory in the physical world in a way that wouldn't make any sense if you were expecting it, and it would make even less sense if you weren't expecting it. Now, probably, you got to figure that like Peter and James and John back in Matthew 17 when the transfiguration happened, like surely they at least imagined, based on all the things that they'd seen Jesus do, that like there was some kind of heavenly form here that somehow what they were seeing of him was some kind of reduced version. Did I just commit an early Christological heresy like the people of the first few centuries? I might have. I didn't mean to. What I mean is that they're not seeing Jesus in the full expression of his glory, and then they do up on the Mount of Transfiguration. They're ready for it. Then they're dumbfounded. They don't know how to respond. And so you can't really begrudge a couple of Roman guards, low man on the totem pole, like everybody else. We're going to go fight the Celts or something. Queen Boudica rises again, and we have to go and defeat the heir to her throne to secure the borders of the empire. Hoorah! Except for you two. Ted and Barry, you're actually going to stay here, and you're going to guard a dead guy by this rock. I mean, what a miserable draw for them. Just make sure this guy stays dead. Also, it sounds like a pretty easy assignment in that regard. But come on, these dudes have no context for this. They've been raised around the pagan religion of the Romans that is descended from the pagan religion of the Etruscans on the Italian peninsula and infused with the pagan religions that came as a result of the, aforementioned casually referenced Caesarean conquests in the 1st century BC of the Gauls and the Alemanni and of Hispania and of the Celts, and of course also the legacy of the Greco-Persian cosmology of gods. The point is, at this point in the 1st century AD, even for a couple of common soldiers, they've been around so many religions from so many different places. They're like, yeah, I get it. Everybody thinks they have one true God or whatever. And, we got Jupiter, like we got Mars, we have temples and stuff, but wink, wink, like get a clue, guys. Everybody has gods. All of it's fake. None of it's real magic. It doesn't work. It isn't a thing. I think that these guys were pretty worn down by religious pluralism. And that's part of the reason I think they were even more stunned when one of them turned out to be true. What the heck? This God is actually real, and the laws of physics and time and space and death and staying dead are actually being violated right in front of their faces. So it's not quite a transfiguration kind of experience for these dudes, but it's also not quite not in terms of the immediate jarring consequences of, as the old hymn says it, faith becoming sight, or in this case, lack of faith becoming immediately quenched with, okay, I believe there's something, because that doesn't make it, there's like a floating, glowing, lightning angel. dude right there, and there's an earthquake, and like it's a gigantic rock. You can't just move it, and that guy's not dead anymore. And boom, they just break. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because there's more stuff in this little paragraph that I want to talk about. But what an incredible moment for these dudes to have the big question that everybody wrestles with. Is there something? Is there more than this? Does death just end the thing? I mean, they just had that answered in like 5 seconds, irrefutably in front of their eyes. And it says that eventually they go back and they give a report about this stuff to their superiors. And as is oft repeated when this passage is covered during Easter season, the rumor is that was kind of a death sentence to go and be like, yeah, we were guarding something and we fell asleep at our post. Is that still the case historically at this point in history that we're reading about here in Matthew 28? And we'll explore that a little bit more as we get further along. But it certainly isn't a good look, at the very least, to admit that you just shook and had like spasms or something and then you fell over and you didn't do your job. Your one job was to keep a dead guy in a guarded, fortified hole in the ground with a big giant rock over it, and you failed at that. And yet that's all they can come up with to report back to the authorities. Apart from just the amazing settling of the big grand question that everybody asks about, is God there and how does this all work? It's also pretty awesome because it's a real flaunting of the imagined power and authority of the Pharisees here. They're going to put a Roman guard there. They are going to use the Gentiles and the power of the state and the sword. They're going to harness it. They're going to use that one ring of power against their enemies. And they're going to use that to make sure that that dead, fake messianic claimant stays right in there with the most powerful thing they can imagine, the most powerful thing in the world, the Roman military. They just went stiff as a board like a fainting goat and fell over. Like, look, if this God has the power to defeat death, seriously, you think you're going to beat him with a couple of guards with those little gladius swords that they used back then? I don't like your chances. So I think it's a fun passage on a lot of levels, and there's more to explore there as well. It's time for me to go sponge up the puddle of drool that has emerged here on my desk in front of my microphone and see if I can get my face to working again sometime soon. If this is the first time you've ever been here, and indeed the numbers on my little podcast app indicate that there are a lot of you for whom this is the case, I'm glad you're here, because honestly, this is a pretty good cross-section of who we are and what we do and what our conversation together is like. So thanks for having a sense of humor. Thanks for being interested in the big stuff, the most important document ever, and the God that it holds out as being behind it. I think it's super, super interesting, and I enjoy hanging out with all y'all. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.